You know him as the hilarious comedian with outrageous stories. But what if I told you there's way more to Theo Von than meets the eye? Behind the jokes and Southern charm is a story of survival, struggle, and transformation. We're talking escaping a cult, battling addiction, homelessness, and hustling his way from reality TV to comedy superstardom. His past is full of shocking twists, dark struggles, and unexpected moments that shaped him into the legend he is today. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see Theo Von in a whole new light. Theo Von's genius isn't just in telling jokes, it's in how he tells them. His storytelling is unmatched. He can take the most ridiculous, off-the-wall experience and turn it into something that feels both hilarious and deeply human.
Tulane University, that's a famous college. University, yeah. It's a center for higher learning. They had their primate testing facility in our town, right? The Monkey Center. And that's where most people were employed at, by the Monkey Center. And in 1994, 70 infected monkeys got out, and they let us out of YMCA summer camp to help the police look for them. So what have you done with your life, okay?
Take his infamous chimpanzee story from his special No Offense. What starts as an absurd story about a wild animal ends up revealing something deeper about fear, chaos, and survival.
Barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
That's what makes Theo different. His humor isn't just random, it's layered. Beyond the laughs, he has a rare kind of emotional intelligence. He connects with people because he's real. He doesn't put on a persona. What you see is what you get. Whether he's making fun of himself, getting personal about his struggles, or sitting down with a guest, he makes people feel like they're having a conversation with an old friend. That's why his audience isn't just made up of comedy fans. It's everyone from blue-collar workers to Hollywood celebrities. Theo isn't just a stand-up comic, he's a podcasting powerhouse. This past weekend is one of the biggest podcasts in the world, ranking number 4 globally on Spotify in 2024. It's not just a place for jokes, it's where he gets personal. He talks about life, struggles, mental health, and everything in between, often bringing guests into raw, unfiltered conversations that feel different from anything else out there. His stand-up career is just as impressive. His Return of the Rat tour sold out across the country, proving that people don't just want to hear him talk online, they want to see him live. His style of comedy isn't traditional. It's spontaneous, unpredictable, and completely unique to him. That's why fans keep coming back. Theo Von wasn't born into an easy life. He came into the world on March 19th, 1980, as Theodore Capitani von Kernatowski III.
My name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Theodore Capitani von Kernatowski.
That's a name,
Crazy.
With a name like that, you'd think he was royalty, but his childhood was anything but privileged. His family background was a mix of cultures: Polish, Nicaraguan, German, English, Irish, and Italian. Yet he grew up in a small Louisiana town where life was tough.
Isn't Von, isn't it Dutch?
That's definitely Polish, right? Yeah, tell me the story.
Well, my father's from Nicaragua. My dad's from Nicaragua. Yeah, he was from Nicaragua, and he was,
Your dad is not Nicaraguan.
One of the strangest things about Theo's upbringing was his father. His dad was 67 years old when Theo was born. Sounds shocking, right? His father was practically a grandfather by the time Theo was born. In his stand-up, he jokes that his dad was 70 when he was born, rounding up for comedic effect.
And she was young, right? She was, what, 32 when I was born?
wow.
So he was 70 then?
Yep, 38-year difference.
So I don't know who would bang an old dude with no money, bro. That's insane. That is pioneer woman, dude.
Growing up in Covington meant being surrounded by all kinds of characters. It was a place filled with hustlers, troublemakers, and people just trying to get by. Theo soaked it all in. The stories he tells now, a lot of them come from the real people he knew back then.
I really feel like I grew up in the stray animal belt of Louisiana, and they don't really have this anymore because everybody has pets now. But they had a long time where there was just, I felt like thousands of strays running around. Like Joey Diaz says he got bit by animals. I got jumped by a bunch of cats on my birthday once, dude. I'm not even joking, dude. And one of them, I swear to God, some of them got me on the ground, and one of them came off a fucking rooftop from next door. I swear to God, I still remember.
It was a world where you had to be sharp, quick-witted, and a little tough to survive. Money was always tight in the Von household. His family's financial situation became even worse when his younger sister needed a liver transplant. Medical bills drained whatever little they had, and things spiraled from there. By the time Theo was 14, his mother couldn't afford to take care of him anymore, so he did something few teenagers would ever consider. He got legally emancipated. At 14 years old, he was on his own.
My father died a couple years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
And then my mother actually lives down in Tucson.
Yeah?
And I think at the age of 14, my mother emancipated me, like legally emancipated me, like signing the contract and everything that just says that I'm responsible for my own actions and whatnot.
No parents, no real home, just a kid trying to survive. He spent years couch surfing, staying with friends, and working whatever jobs he could find. Homelessness wasn't something he talked about much at the time, but it was a reality. Then when he was 16, his father passed away. Just like that, the only real parent he had was gone. While most teenagers were worried about school dances and sports, Theo was dealing with loss, survival, and figuring out where his next meal was coming from. For Theo, comedy wasn't just something fun. It was a tool for survival. When you don't have much, humor is free currency. It helped him make friends, get out of trouble, and carve out a place in the world. The people he grew up around were wild, and he learned early on that storytelling was a way to hold attention. He would watch the way people talked, the way they exaggerated, the way they spun even the smallest details into something interesting. That's what he does now. I mean, he takes life, no matter how hard or strange, and turns it into something worth laughing at. But behind the humor was always a deeper reality. Theo Von's life wasn't easy. He had to fight for everything he had, and yet, instead of letting it break him, he turned it into something powerful. Theo Von's entry into the entertainment world wasn't through comedy clubs or open mics. It was through MTV. While attending Louisiana State University, he auditioned for Road Rules, Maximum Velocity Tour in 2000 and made the cut.
It's a different kind of day for Theo. Like about the past month, I've seen like I'm in limbo, kind of like I'm between like lives, kind of.
At just 19, he was suddenly thrown into the world of reality television, traveling with strangers and competing in wild challenges. It was a strange start for a guy who would later become one of comedy's most unique voices. But at the time, it was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. Reality TV became a huge part of his early career. After Road Rules, he competed on The Challenge from 2002 to 2006, appearing on multiple seasons and even winning twice. He wasn't just another face on MTV, he was one of the most well-known competitors on the show. But despite the fame, something didn't feel right. Reality TV was entertaining, but it wasn't what he wanted to do forever. He had a bigger dream, and at 23, he packed up and moved to Los Angeles, ready to chase comedy. The problem is, nobody took him seriously. In the early 2000s, being a reality TV star wasn't a badge of honor. It was a label that made people skeptical, especially in stand-up. Comedy clubs weren't interested in a guy who got famous on MTV. They saw him as just another TV personality trying to cash in on something he wasn't built for. But Theo wasn't looking for an easy way in. He was willing to start from the bottom. His first gigs weren't glamorous. He had to do bringer shows, where comedians were required to bring their own audience just to get stage time. If you didn't bring enough people, you didn't perform. He was grinding, performing in tiny rooms, often for free, just to get better. One of his most bizarre gigs was a USO tour in Guantanamo Bay, performing for the troop station there. That was Theo taking every chance he could, even if it meant telling jokes in one of the most infamous places in the world. In 2006, he got his first big break in comedy, sort of. He competed on Last Comic Standing, winning the title of fan favorite. It gave him exposure, but not the credibility he was looking for. He still wasn't seen as a real comedian.
I had a pretty crazy life, man. My father was 70 years old when I was born. Shortly after I was born, my dad had one of his strokes. So we were both learning to walk at the same time. And we would play games like catch or don't.
The industry had a hard time accepting him. He wasn't part of the traditional comedy scene, and no matter how many gigs he did, he was still fighting for recognition. Everything changed in 2017. He had been doing stand-up for over a decade, but it wasn't until he started paying attention to podcasting that things really clicked. Joe Rogan's The Joe Rogan Experience was blowing up, and Theo saw how podcasting allowed comedians to be themselves. No scripts, no forced punchlines. It was just honest, unfiltered conversation. That was the missing piece. He started shifting his comedy style, leaning more into his natural storytelling ability. He stopped trying to fit into a mold and started embracing what made him different. He talked about his past, his struggles, his insane life experiences. His stand-up became personal, weird, and deeply authentic. And that's when people started paying attention. Theo's comedic evolution wasn't just about telling jokes. It was about finding his own voice. He took inspiration from comedians like Joe Rogan, Tom Segura, and Bill Burr, but he never copied them. Instead, he blended their confidence with his own unique style, one that felt effortless and unpredictable. He wasn't just another stand-up comic anymore. He was becoming something bigger. The same industry that once doubted him was now taking notice. His stand-up specials started gaining traction. His fan base was growing, and most importantly, he He had finally carved out his own space in comedy. It wasn't an overnight success. It was years of rejection, grinding, and figuring out who he really was. But by the time he hit his stride, there was no stopping him. By 2016, Theo Von had already spent years in comedy, but he still wasn't a household name. That changed when he launched This Past Weekend. What started as a small podcast recorded in his closet turned into one of the biggest podcasts in the world. This Past Weekend was different from other comedy podcasts. It wasn't just about interviews or random jokes. It was a mix of everything. Solo episodes where Theo would share bizarre, introspective stories, deep conversations with guests, and the kind of humor that made people laugh even when they weren't sure why. It was weird, heartfelt, and completely unpredictable. That's why people loved it.
You go on OnlyFans at all?
No, I logged on one night and then I logged off. You know, I'm trying to stay off of masturbation, stay off touching my own wiener.
Really?
Yeah, I don't need to do it. I'm doing cool. You know, I feel better when I don't do it.
A major turning point came when he appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience for the first time. Rogan has one of the biggest podcasts in the world.
How long did you live there for?
I still live there.
Whoa.
Yeah, we've passed. I mean, we've kind of, you know, like I've caught him doing some things. So I think
And Theo's episode introduced him to millions of new listeners. His chemistry with Rogan was undeniable. Both of them had a raw, unfiltered way of talking that made their conversations magnetic. Rogan saw something in Theo, and his endorsement helped push Theo's podcast to the next level. Over time, Theo became a regular guest on Rogan's show. The two bonded over their struggles, their careers, and their shared love of deep, unexpected conversations. What really set Theo apart was how he dominated social media. His podcast wasn't just something people listened to, it was something they shared. His bizarre one-liners, off-the-wall observations, and unexpected wisdom made him perfect for platforms like TikTok and YouTube. Clips from This Past Weekend would rack up millions of views overnight. His way of saying things, completely unfiltered and sometimes borderline nonsensical, made him an internet phenomenon. The guests he brought on only added to his reach. Unlike most podcasts that stuck to traditional celebrities, Theo would talk to anyone.
Sitting here right here, actually, with my two nephews right here, a couple young buckaroos, and
1 week, he'd have a truck driver on. The next, a mortician. And then, out of nowhere, he'd sit down with Candace Owen.
How many years is it?
How many years do they tell people, or how many years is it actually?
Wow. That's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That fact that this was unpredictable was what made his podcast so addictive. You never knew what was coming next. So that was how Theo Von had officially broken the internet. He wasn't just a comedian. He wasn't just a podcaster. He had become one of the most influential voices in entertainment without ever trying to be. His journey from a reality TV contestant to a stand-up comedian to a global podcasting sensation was something nobody could have predicted. But if you look at how he got here, it all makes sense. Theo Von has always been open about his past, but there's one story that still leaves fans scratching their heads: the time he was in a cult. He mentioned it briefly on The Fighter and The Kid, but like most things Theo says, it was hard to tell if he was joking or being serious. He never gave many details, only that he somehow got involved in a group that had cult-like elements.
That's when I got involved in this damn cult.
What the fuck?
What
Is that a real cult?
Yeah, bro.
Are you not on set, dude?
That's out in Reseda, dude.
What are you doing?
Huh?
Why are you doing
Looking
that?
for the Lord, brother. What do you think I was doing?
Some fans speculate it happened during his younger years in Louisiana, while others believe it could have been during his struggles with addiction. Either way, it was enough of an experience for him to reference it multiple times in his comedy.
You work out in general?
I used to. I used to be into like powerlifting and everything, dude. I used to be jacked back in the day.
Really?
I was an animal, dude. I was fucking
Were you on them
sprinkling
steroids?
protein powder under my.
Were you
under
on them
my,
steroids, though?
I was on steroids for a while when I was young, dude.
Really?
Yeah.
You were on
I was on
steroids?
testosterone, something.
His past with addiction is something he doesn't joke about as much. Theo has been brutally honest about his battle with drugs, particularly cocaine. He's talked about how it took over his life, leading to a moment where he completely lost his voice in Harlem. That was his wake-up call. He realized he was spiraling and needed to change. He found his way to Alcoholics Anonymous, started working on himself, and eventually got clean. Now he's been sober for over 14 years, but he never tries to paint himself as some kind of saint. He still struggles, still fights those old demons, and still uses humor to deal with it all. His podcast has become an unexpected source of support for people dealing with addiction. He doesn't preach or try to sound like an expert. He just shares his experiences, talks about the struggles, and reminds people that they're not alone. His honesty about sobriety has made him relatable to fans who see him as more than just a comedian. He's someone who's been through it, survived it, and still finds a way to laugh about it. Then came the Trump interview. In 2024, Theo sat down with Donald Trump. and the internet exploded. People expected a chaotic, politically charged debate, but instead Theo did what he always does. He made it weird. Instead of focusing on policy, he led the conversation into personal struggles, addiction, and self-improvement. It was unlike any Trump interview before, and that's exactly why it went viral.
I noticed at the events you don't drink, and you don't drink or smoke, right?
I don't drink or smoke.
You never have?
No, I never have. I had a great brother who taught me a lesson: don't drink, and he said don't smoke. He smoked and he drank, and he was a great guy. He was a handsome, very handsome guy.
Is he older? He was older?
Quite a bit older, yeah. And he had a problem with alcohol and smoke a lot, but I tell people, no drugs, no drinking, no cigarettes.
Yeah.
I tell that to my kids all the time. I'd say no drugs, no drinking, no smoke.
Some loved it, others hated it, but one thing was clear: it got people talking. His podcast this past weekend skyrocketed to #1 on Spotify, breaking records. The controversy only fueled his momentum, proving that Theo had officially reached a level where even the biggest figures in the world wanted to sit down and talk with him. Theo Von isn't just a comedian and podcaster, he's a brand. Over the years, he's turned his persona into a business empire. His merchandise flies off the shelves, with fans buying everything from t-shirts to hats featuring his signature phrases. His stand-up tours sell out within hours, packing arenas full of people who just want to hear him ramble about life in the strangest way possible. To add to that, his podcast is pulling in millions of listeners, bringing in sponsorship deals, and making him one of the most profitable comedians in the industry. Despite his success, Theo has never fully embraced the Hollywood lifestyle. He doesn't live in a mansion surrounded by A-list celebrities. He still holds on to his Southern roots, preferring a quiet, laid-back life away from the industry nonsense. Fame doesn't seem to change him. He stays in his own world, thinking deeply about life, telling bizarre stories, and staying true to himself. One of the most interesting things about Theo is how much he values loyalty and authenticity. He doesn't chase mainstream approval, doesn't filter himself for the sake of popularity, and never tries to be someone he's not. He has a deep sense of brotherhood with the people close to him, and he's always been vocal about the importance of staying grounded. He could have gone the Hollywood route, but he chose a different path, one that kept him real and unpredictable. There are a lot of comedians and podcasters out there, but none of them are quite like Theo Von. What makes him special isn't just his humor, it's the way he balances absurdity with deep, meaningful conversations. While other comedians stick to traditional punchlines and storytelling, Theo doesn't. He keeps people on edge, never letting them fully understand where he's going next. That unpredictability is what keeps his fans coming back. They don't just see him as a comedian, they see him as someone who speaks their language, someone who isn't afraid to be weird, vulnerable, and brutally honest. His podcast continues to grow, reaching millions of listeners worldwide. His stand-up career is at its peak, with sold-out shows across the country. And with the way things are going, it wouldn't be surprising if he expands into new areas, whether it's acting, writing, or something completely unexpected. With Theo, you never know. That's part of the magic. So, is Theo Von really who you thought he was? A reality TV contestant turned stand-up comedian? A podcasting powerhouse? A deep thinker hiding behind bizarre humor? The truth is, he's all of those things and more. His journey from a troubled Louisiana kid to a global phenomenon is proof that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the biggest success. His ability to evolve, embrace his past, and stay true to his voice is what makes him one of the most fascinating figures in entertainment today. If you think you have Theo Von figured out, think again. The only thing predictable about him is that he'll always keep you guessing. So tell us in the comments, what do you think about him? And before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe for videos like this.